it's lovely to have your company back here, where on this video what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having a look and creating a pop-up box. Now a pop-up box, there's so many different sizes and variations with depths and all of that you can be creating. So the one that we're going to show you in the black and white form is the one that, well, if I ever do a pop-up box, this is kind of the size that I like to go with, because I kind of get as much out of a A4 sheet as you possibly can. So let's delve straight in and then let's get started, where we can take our scoreboard. Now we're going to go in with our white cardstock and we are going to cut this to start with to 11.5 by 7. So we're going to go 11.5 by 7. Now if you wanted your pop-up box to be a little bit taller, then you could get away with adding a little bit more height to it by keeping that length on. But as I said at the start, this is kind of the size pop-up box that I like to go with. And then we're going to turn that one around. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to turn that lengthways, and then we're going to score at 3 1/4. So let's go 3 1/4. We're going to go 5 1/2, 5 1/2, 8 3/4, 8 3/4, and then we're going to go 11 inches just here at the end, like so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to then turn that around, and then we're going to score at 4 inches. However, what we're going to do is we're going to stop at this line here. So if we just show you that, there's our glue tab on that top end. So we're going to come in 4 inches and we're going to score down, 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 and then we're going to stop at that score line, because we don't want to have any scores on what will be that back panel. So pop it back into place, score all the way down to 4, or score at 4 all the way down to that first score line, and then that is how it's going to start to come together once we've done a little bit of cutting. So let's move that out the way, and then I'm just going to use my scissors for this. What we're going to do here is we're going to chop out this rectangle section here. So if I chop that out, you could use your craft knife and ruler, you could be using your V-blade trimmer if you want to, but I'm just going to go in straight with my scissors and snip that out. Now we've got that little glue tab. What I like to do, just at a very, very, very light angle, and I mean just a very light angle, we're just going to snip in. And then what we're going to do here on these 3 score lines, we're going to chop down. Scissors if you want to, craft knife if you want to. I am just going to use my scissors because I'm quite confident in cutting straight by following that score line just until we get to that base score. We're going to do that one again within that next section, just following down, and then we're going to do that once again for the last time, just until we get to that score line, and then that's where we stop. So we're going to have a layer that looks like that. So what we're going to do is let's start to fold them in on themselves. So we're just going to fold and burnish in a moment. So fold and then fold. So this is how it's going to start to come together, and then these 3 are going to bend back on themselves. And the reason we didn't want a score line on that back panel is because that's going to be exactly that, our back panel. So let's just go back in, let's give them a really good burnish by scoring all the way in, like so, because it will fold relatively flat. So you do want it to be nicely scored, nicely burnished, so you've got that flexibility when it comes to the actual movement of the pop-up box. And then once again, you can see how the pop-up box is going to start to come together. Now you could of course do that within your adorable scoreboard, designer card, mirror, whatever it is that you want. But for the sake of course, this video, we're going to do it in white and then black and white. So I'm just going to cut my mats and layers for these. So that one is 2 1/4 by, so do you know what? The height of that is 4 inches. So I'm just going to go straight in with my guillotine. And then let's cut a long strip at 4 inches. Let's do 4 inches. And because I like to do the inside as well, let's do another one. So these layers on the way to cut, we're going to do double because I'm going to stick them on the inside as well. So let's stick and move that out the way. So what did I say that one was? I said that was 2 1/4. So that's exactly the same. So there's 2 that I need, and then I'll need 4 for the other side. So because that's the height of 4 inches, let's come down 1/4 inch, and then the width was 2 1/4. So let's then cut that to 2 inch. So just so you can see where I'm going, and that's where we're going with my thought process of the measurements. So let's do another 3. So for this one, because I'm on that smaller scale now, let's go down to my small guillotine. So I'm just going to line that one up with the 2 inch. Pop that one into there, align each one. And let's get that cut in. So that is going to be my 4. And then for that one there, that is 3 1/4. Let me just double check. Yeah, 3 1/4. However, I only need 2, that one and that one, because of course we will do that one later on. So let's do 3 inches. Let's bring that one in there. So we've now got what that one will be. And then let's do another one. So we need to do that at 3 inch. And of course I still need to trim these ones down to 3 3/4. So let's just bring that one in just to make sure I've got the 2 of them. Yep. So 1 for front, 1 for back. So we can set that out the way. And then what I'm going to do here is let's also do these parts too. So once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to need, well, double for each of these, but these ones are exactly the same size. So that is 3 by 2 1/4. So let's do, so it was 2 1/4, so let's do 2 inches by 2 3/4. Perfect. So another 3, so I can turn that around now, it'll fit. So let's trim that down to 2 3/4. And what did I say that was? 2 inches. So let's do 2 inches, another twice, line up, and then I'm going to do that once again, like so. So that's going to be some of my panel flaps. Let me just double check that one. 3 3/4, which will obviously be the same 3. So 3 1/4, not 3 3/4, 3 1/4. So let's trim that down to 3 inches by, I can't even remember now, 2 3/4. Have I said that right? Yes, I have. So let me just do another one. 2 3/4 and that will be my panels for those sections done. So let's move that to the side. So that's my foldovers, that's my edges, and then for these is, of course, because we've cut it of course to 7 inches, 7 inches by 3 3/4. I keep saying 3 3/4, it's 3 1/4. So let's trim it down to 3 inch by, I'm going to have to go back to my large, well I don't have to go to my large guillotine. What I can do is bring in my ruler. So I said 7 inches, so 6 3/4. Let's do 6 3/4. Trim that, make sure we're okay. Yep, and then I just need to do another one for the inside, 3 inches. And then what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to rest that on, move that in, and then where I see that end cut line, cut that, and then I've got two exactly the same. So before we glue all of those parts in, well actually no, let's do all of that before we do that little panel inside. So I'm going to go in with, let's see if it's going to play ball. Now, what I like to do here is I like to mat and layer the insides before I start to, of course, assemble it. The only thing I'm not going to do is mat and layer that inside back panel, because I want, if I do that first, then what's going to happen is when I put my glue tab on, it means you're still going to see it. So I'm going to do that last. So let's open these ones up, and then let's pop our mats and layers for all of these. And we're just going to add them in. And something like this, a wet glue, or if you're someone that likes the construction glue, that's a good one. With it being a pop-up box, it's going to take a little bit of weight inside with that panel strip and acetate and toppers. It's a nice one to use, that wet glue, so that what will happen is it's just going to add to the strength. Layer that up. The good thing with the weights of our adorable scoreboard and mirror, because they're great to use as an actual base. Lovely to do a pop-up box where the base is actually mirror or adorable scoreboard. And whether you're using our glue or Stix2's glue, because they are a real beautiful quality with not a lot of water content, it really does mean you do not need a lot, as you can see from the very little that I put on. There we go. There is our layers all done. So I'm going to add my glue onto there, and then I'm just going to fold that one over, and then we're just going to press to let that grab. It's a nice little way just to hide that little glue tab so that you're not going to see it. So there is that. So let's bring in our panel, work it all the way round, and then we're just going to slot that in. So even on something like this, if I was to use my double-sided tape, which is something that I would also tend to do, when you're needing to slot it into something, this is where a glue is really good, because it means you've got that movement instead of having to get it straight in first time. So press down, and And then there we go. We'll start to get our pop-up box, which still folds flat, which will fold to, so I would say a 6 by 8 envelope. That gives you that nice little bit of extra width. Plus, it's also going to give you about 1 inch at the top. So if you're going to have anything popping out on acetate toppers, if it's a little bit higher than the back, then you don't need to worry. You've still got that little bit of scope. But there is the pop-up box. And then what we want to do is we want to create a couple of kind of bridges in the middle. Now, of course, from left to right is 3 3/4. So I need my strip to be 3 3/4, plus I need a couple of little tags at the end for the actual glue tab. I like them to also be round about 1/2 inch in depth. So not 1/2 inch, 1 inch in depth. Or is it 3/4 inch? Oh, I can't remember now what I do. We'll have a look in a minute as we go to cut. So let's take that strip that we had left over. So obviously I said we needed 3 3/4. So I like to add 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch on each side. So that's 3 1/4 plus 1/2 inch, which is 3 3/4. And then another 1/2 inch, so that's 4 1/4. So we need, and we'll recap those measurements in a minute. So 4 1/4 by, yes, it is 1 inch that I do. So we'll get these two strips out of that panel we cut from the start. So 4 1/4 by 1 inch. And then let's bring our scoreboard. I tend to put 2 in. You could do 1/3 if you want to. And then what we're going to do is let's score at 1/2 inch. I just always like to turn it around, and 1/2 inch. So there's our 3 1/4 plus our 1/2 plus our 1/2, which gives us, of course, the 4 1/4, which then will just fit inside once we've glued it in. So we're going to do the same within that second one. Turn it around. You don't have to turn it around, I just do. There's our 2 tabs. So now that that is 1 1/4 by 3 1/4, let's take, I'm going to come down probably 2 notches. Actually, no, let's just do a full, yeah, 3 inch by 3/4 inch. Am I going to be happy with that? Yes, that's what I want. So let's do that again. So 3 inch by 1/4 inch, because we're going to do the opposite side and then also under that as well. So let's do 3 by 1/4 inch, and then we can do 3, perfect, by 1/4 inch. And if you really want to be fussy like I am, you can always do these little tabs, just so that when you're seeing them on the inside, it's going to colour coordinate with what you've already got. And I'm just wondering if I've got a couple of like offcuts. I wonder if any of them would do. Let's do a little bit of trimming, because obviously it is 1/2 inch. So the other thing that we could do, and instead of course trying to get the 1/2 inch there, a little tip for anything like that, take your card and get it to the nearest inch, whatever it is, as long as it's like at 1/4 inch. That's 3 inches. So because that's 1/2 inch there, if I just want 1/4 inch, what I do, instead of trying to work out 1/4 inch, line up, try and get it straight, then cut, what I'll do is I'm at 3" let's come down 1/4 inch cut. Now there's my 1/4 inch strip that can go into there, and I'm just going to do that another 3 times. So let's come down, because I don't need to double that, because to the edges are going to be stuck to the side, so you're not going to see the white space. And as I said, this is optional. You don't need to go to this extent if you don't want to. But sometimes it's nice. Let's turn that one around. And then I could actually have done this one to start with, because that is 1 inch. What I could do is just trim that to 3/4 inch, which will be a nice little layer to go in there. And it just matches that 1/4 inch increments all the way around. So let's do that one. What I should have done is cut a strip that was 3/4 inch in width, and then just kept trimming at 1/4 inch. A bit hey-ho. Alright, so that's all those bits. So let's bring in our glue tabs, and then nice little wiggle, and pop into there. Now on that front side, I don't want those little matte and layer tabs at the side, because once that's stuck in, that's going to be stuck against the wall, so you're not going to see them. So I'm just going to make sure that that is straight, which it is, and let's turn it around. Now all 3 of these sections I can do. So let's pop that one on. So let's align that one. Press down, and then we can do a little squiggle. Pop that on. Just all these tiny little attention to details. They're worth it. Certainly if you're doing like a concept or that, it can be worth it. In my opinion anyway. Not everyone will feel like that, and that's absolutely fine. There's no right or wrong way. So this front one is just going to be this strip. So let's just press them ones down just before we start to manipulate them into place. Press, press, press. So we've got these, so we're going to fold them back on themselves, and then these ones are going to slot into there, that you can see, obviously staying once they're glued. And then it's up to you how far that you want the distance to be. So what I'm going to do is, let's go, I'm not going to go quite where we've got those tabs, I'm not going to go quite flush against that back wall, that 1/2 inch depth. I'm maybe going to come forward just a teeny little bit, and I'm going to kind of run parallel along that top layer of the black card, not right to the top, just where that top matte and layer of the black card is. Just gives it that little bit more, not only give, but what it also does is it just makes it fold down flatter, and it's not, the tab's not just flush against that folded seam at the top. So I can turn it on its side, push it in just so that I'm getting it parallel. Move that in. If I need to, nudge that down with my bone folder. So once I've got that straight, is it straight? Yes, it is. It's just on the camera. It doesn't look too straight, but it is. Like that grip. And then we can do the same with the next one. So put the glue on that white side. Just going to bend that one in slightly. I'm going to tuck that in, and then I'm just going to add that, run that along that top part of the black card. Once I've got it, I'm just going to press, make sure I'm straight, which I am, and then we're just going to hold that down. Let that grab. Poor dog out there's not happy. Let's then hold of that, hold of that. And there we go. And then you can see how it folds flat either way. And it's a nice thing to do that at this point and really just press down as well. Flex the fibres and flex these little pads so you can have your acetate, foiled acetate. You can have that coming out with, of course, die cut butterflies, numbers, whatever it is, toppers. It's entirely up to yourself. So folds flat, or if you wanted to open it up and then fold it. Either way, it would go in the same size envelopes. As I said before, you've got a little bit of give on the 6-inch, so nice bit of movability, and then you've also got a little bit extra there on the top of the 8-inch. So if you've got anything that's just going to pop out, you've still got that little bit of space. But then there you go. There's your pop-up box that you can see here. And then let's show you that in a little bit more close detail. Right, so let's turn that one around so you can see. Turn that one over so you can see me all the way through. And then there you go. There's your pop-up box. So, hopefully you enjoyed that one. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed it. And if you do make and post them on social, tag me, tag Hunkydory. It's always nice to see. And yeah, give me the thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, if you've enjoyed it, then do subscribe. It would be a pleasure. Right, till the next time, we'll see you again.